I feel like in a lot of ways, all of the things that we hate about legacy media are exactly the same game as this two-party system. Let's talk about the Senate. I don't know about you, but I have observed the Senate being very busy in the last couple weeks, especially as they've been moving Trump's administration nominees through the Senate and through the particular committees asking questions and assessing if they're the right people for the job. And there's some things that really frustrate me about how our government works. And one of those things in particular is the like two-party dynamic and how that creates a lot of manipulation of the people who are in authority that we've voted in, a lot of manipulation based on, walking the party line versus really having the interest of the American people. And I get that both parties think, they're committed, they're convinced that they have the interest of the American people and the particular agenda that they're bringing forward for the American people. But the reality is so much is happening on in the inner workings of the Senate and the Congress that are really just about our leader said vote this way, or our leader said don't ask these questions. And this happens both on the Democratic side, on the liberal side, and on the conservative Republican side. And it's becoming more and more ugly to me, quite honestly. And so let's talk about it a little bit and kind of talk about what it would look like if we had a Senate or a Congress or both that wasn't about a particular party line, but was really about the best interest of the state we represent and the American people at large. I see some senators doing this, really just, they're not afraid to drill their party's nominees. They're not afraid to ask intense questions. And I think that they're doing their job if they do that. And there are obviously some conservative pundits and some, gung-ho Trumpers that are like, why are you picking on them? Just vote them in, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, guys, their job, like, the Senate, the Congress, their job is to hold the integrity of the United States. And sometimes they do their job and sometimes they don't. And sometimes their interpretation of that is not your interpretation or my interpretation. And so we're always working to make sure that we're putting into office people that can hold the safety and security of our country to, do their job in a way that benefits the American people and that puts the American people first, because that's their job as a politician. That's their job as an officer of the United States. And there's going to be times for us as believers where putting America first is in contradiction to what God asks of us. I'm not a Christian nationalist in any particular skewed definition of that phrase, and I don't believe that Christians should be Christian nationalists, that we should Americanize everything and anything and do all the things that Christian nationalists think we should do, and are truly like, this is where we kind of divide, right? Where like Christians are Christians first and then we are Americans. And sometimes those things very much complement each other. And even the Bible talks about that, right? We are working to do the best for the land that we live in. That's a really bad paraphrase of that verse. But the reality is we're wanting the best. We're wanting righteousness for the land that we live in. I think about Daniel. Daniel's a beautiful example of wanting the best, wanting righteousness for the land that he lived in. It was so far gone to so many of the prisoners that were pulled into Babylon. And yet Daniel stood for righteousness without apologizing, and he was respected for that, and he was put in positions of power. I also think about Joseph. Joseph's another great example of somebody who didn't apologize for his beliefs and for his faith in the Lord. And he didn't just keep it for his own personal preferences. He actually was outspoken about how the country and the land that he lived in would be better off if they followed the Lord, if they upheld righteousness, if they listened to the Lord. I think that's beautiful. That's how we should be in America. So we're not backing a man. We are standing for the righteousness that God himself has laid out and made evident to us as believers. And all of that being said, I think this is where the party line divides. My dad always said, all of us should be independents. We're never tied or loyal to a particular party, because when we do that, we're loyal to man-made laws and man-made agendas that can totally be manipulated. And this is really striking to me, because as we see the Republican Party very much move from far, far to the right, more to the center, as we have, nominees that are being put in positions of power that have been Democrats for a long time, have been very liberal in their ideology, being put in positions of power in the Republican Party, we're going to continue to start seeing the Republican Party move center. That's how they won, and it's how they'll keep winning if the status quo is kept with a two-party sort of system. And this is really frustrating to me as I look at the Senate in particular, because I've been watching all of these nominee hearings, and it's really frustrating, not so much how they've been doing their job, because I think they've been doing their job really well. The Republicans have been asking really important, hard, good questions of the nominees, genuine concerns that they have. I'm very grateful that they are asking questions, and for those who don't have concerns, you're lying to yourself, because there are concerns with each of these individuals that are being put up as nominees. I have concerns. The Senate should have concerns around national security. They should have concerns about the agenda that these people are bringing forward. They should have concerns about their respective, not the status quo, but their respective authority and the checks and balances that keep our country free, in a sense. And if these nominees are not respecting those things and are really truly not putting America first, and not being committed to the safety and security of our country, then there's going to be real concerns. And it feels frustrating to me, to be honest, when there's, a Democratic president in office and they're putting, Democratic nominees forward, and the Republicans are saying, no, 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 no. And like asking really, really hard questions, but also questions that have intentional spins and intentional agendas. And then the Democratic side is like, yes, 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 without any real thought or care about what they could potentially be concerned about with these nominees. And the same happens on the Republican side, where, Republican senators are bullied on the side in independent media or in mainstream conservative media. They're bullied and belittled for asking serious questions, and they're picked on because, stop playing hardball, just get them through. This is Trump's agenda. If you're going to get in the way, then get out, because we're going to lobby for somebody to replace your seat. Right? So it's like this lack of actual care for the American people and just for the party line. And this is why, like my dad, I really truly believe we all are supposed to be, especially as believers, right? I'm always talking about it in that context. We are supposed to be independents, because God is the one that sets the laws. God is the one that upholds righteousness. God's law is the one that we're supposed to live by. And so if we're following a man, or we're following a man backed by a party, and that party changes their agenda or changes their worldview or changes how they think about this particular element of righteousness, leans more towards the space of sin and unrighteousness, then what do we do then? Oh, I'm a Republican. Oh, I'm a Democrat. Well, are you a child of God? Well, then in the world of political decisions and priorities, we need to come to each of the decisions and each of the people that are being propped up by particular parties, by, independent parties. We should be looking at each of these people at face value and saying, are these righteous leaders that are being put before us as options? Are these people that we would actually vote for that uphold a level of righteousness and a level of justice in our country, in our land, right? So we should be independents. We shouldn't be, walking around labeling ourselves as a Republican or walking around labeling ourselves as a Democrat. And I realize that there are a lot of Christians that would call themselves Republican, and so you get to make those decisions for yourself. But this may just be a different twist or a different spin on something that maybe you hadn't thought about. Or, imagine, what it would look like if the Senate and Congress was not a two-party tier, the President of the United States was not a two-party tier, but that independent individuals who stood for values that align with the United States of America actually had a shot at being in positions of authority, at being voted in, and at not being all of the insane amounts of billions and billions of dollars that are backed by the party lines. I feel like in a lot of ways, all of the things that we hate about legacy media are exactly the same game as this two-party system. Republicans backed by tons of money, backed by this is where you can play, and if you play outside of that, then we're kicking you out. You can't be our nominee. You can't be the person that we, put forward as our Republican representative or as our Democratic representative. And it also, I think the other element that comes to play here is that both senators, congressmen and women, and the president of the United States and everybody that they put in positions now knows that they have to, instead of playing the game of standing loyally and committed to the American people and their safety and security and freedom, we're instead saying, oh, well, I have to play within these particular laws and these particular rules to be playing nice with the Republican Party or to be playing nice with the Democratic Party and all of the changes and fluctuations to their particular agendas. And that is really frustrating. And we're throwing billions and billions of dollars every year into these parties, and it's frustrating to me because, we know in a way that, if we keep following what has always been, then the independent party has no shot. And yet if we keep thinking that and keep making decisions that uphold this two-system agenda and this two-party kind of idea that's been present for so long in the United States, then what we end up with in Senate is fall in line. Don't ask hard questions. This is our nominee. Say yes to them, vote them on the floor, lobby for them, move. And if you don't, you're going to get kicked out of your seat, and we're going to replace somebody that's going to be more loyal to our agenda. That really frustrates me. That kind of, y'all, I have opinions about that. I don't love it, but I want to know what you think. What do you think about the possibilities of if we really legitimately dismantled this two-party system and actually built systems in the United States that gave independent individuals a chance to actually win and leveled the playing field, what do you think would be the potential issues with that? What do you think the pros and cons? Play with me in the comments. What would be your concerns? What do you think would be the benefit? How do you think we could build it? How do you think we could, create it in the United States in the next, 8, 10, 15 years even? I know this is something that, the turning a ship, you got to turn a ship slowly, right? And yet we as believers have a responsibility to stand for righteousness and to stand for good. And I got to tell you, it has been harder and harder and harder every 4 years to do so within the context of two political parties that are really starting to figure out that the way that they win is to be more tolerant and to move more to the center of agenda, of good and evil, of righteousness, of things that Republicans would never, ever have ever thought to back before, and now they do. And the Democratic Party is going to potentially start learning the same thing, which is we need to look like we're more conservative than we really truly are. And one final thing I'll leave you with is ask yourself, if the objective of a individual that wants to represent the United States of America is to fit into a political party, even if they don't actually believe or agree with that agenda or that belief, or that way of doing or holding up justice, then ask yourself, how soon will it be when they get into office that their worldview will inevitably start to make the decisions, prioritize, act particular ways, make particular executive orders? How soon will it be that the actual worldview of the individual influences the way they see the world and the way that they respond to the world? And I would argue that will inevitably happen. And if you're propping yourself up in a particular way to win for a particular party, but you don't actually believe that, it will end up being manipulation. It will end up being lying. It will end up being deception to the American people. And if we are a part of that system and a part of keeping that system alive, then we are a part of that game of manipulation as well as believers. And it's kind of humbling. And it's had me really, really thinking after this last election. It's like, man, I don't want to be a part of this like two-party game anymore. It's exhausting and it's filled with lots of bureaucratic money on both sides. And I think it would be refreshing to really seriously consider what it would look like to dismantle this two-party system and prop up individuals who really truly have the American people in mind and not a bunch of bureaucratic money that has been the game for so long. So let me know what you think about the Senate, how that would look like in the Senate, how that would look in the Congress and in the White House. What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What would you propose? I'll see you on the next video.